Hi, everyone, once again. Thanks so much for joining today's session from SLA chaos to cross team clarity in Jira and JSM. And we are really happy to have you here. And today, as you probably already know, we will be talking about SLAs, but not about SLAs as a timers or things that hitting targets, more like as something that affects how multiple teams work together because SLA for us aren't just about timers or hitting targets, as I said, they are about visibility, ownership, and smoother collaboration across the board. And before we dive in, I would like to introduce me, and my colleague will introduce herself. I'm Diana. I'm leading the customer success team at Deviniti. And on a daily basis, I'm helping customers to work closely with our products. And I've always focused on customer relations, whether through user support or partnerships. And I've observed how minor SLAs issues can escalate into significant problems. And that's why I'm excited for today's session, where I will share a bit the agent's perspective on how SLAs function in Jira and JSM for me. And I'm joined today by my colleague Marta.
Hi, my name is Marta, and I am a product manager at Deviniti. And my experience is basically focused around building ITSM solutions from scratch, of course, within the Atlassian ecosystem. And recently, I was working on a new app related to SLA management. And today, I would like to share with you some insights from different interviews with people who are dealing with SLAs on their daily basis. I would like to share some general pain points and needs. And I hope to share some also ideas how you could help yourself make things a little bit smoother.
Perfect. And I don't know how about you guys, but I believe we are like a great choice to talk about it. And here's what we've got planned for today for you. We will start by sharing some of our own experiences where SLAs tend to break down the kind of issues we see most often and why things get tricky when multiple teams are involved. Then we will talk about what happens without SLA control and SLA pain points and practical solutions to it. And finally, we will try to wrap it up with a few key takeaways and jump into your questions. And our goal is to leave you guys with practical ideas you can actually apply, how to design SLAs that reflect real time responsibilities, how to keep them visible and useful, and how to make sure they support your teams, not slow them down. And the session will last about 45 minutes. Marta and I are quite the duo when it comes to engaging conversation. So it's about 45 minutes, but we will leave the last 10 or so for your questions. Moreover, we are recording this webinar and we will send the recording and additional extra materials about good practice after the session. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat tab. We will try to get to some of them live at the end of our session for today. So that's more or less the plan for today, a bit of storytelling, a bit of practical advice, and hopefully some ideas you can actually use. And right now, I would like to jump into the question why SLA management is a hot topic in ITSM. Because when I think about SLAs, I don't see them as just some numbers or some timers in. For me, it's always tied to real situations, moment when things went off track, even though everyone tried their best. And from the support side, I've seen tickets go in cycles. Support to dev team, back to support, to customer, and back again. And sometimes no one really knew who should take over or how much time we had left. So it's frustrating, because Not because people don't care, but because the process sometimes is unclear or something in the process is missing. And right now, I would like to ask you, Marta, because I know you've spent a lot of time digging into this. What pushed you to explore the SLA challenges more deeply?
To be honest, the topic started when I was a product manager of our other ITSM oriented app. And while talking to different people, I understood in the way that the SLA topic is really important to them. They talked about some different issues regarding the SLA management. And after a while, we decided to dig deeper into that area. And to be honest, at first, before I started my research, I assumed that SLAs are, quite a simple timers, more technical metrics that are meant basically to track support desk performance. But during the discovery process, when I dived deeper into that topic, I interviewed several people, basically service desk experts. I've came to realize that SLA, it's not only about counting time, it's not about timers. If you use the SLA tool in the right way, it can be really incredible and streamline your service desk process.
I totally agree with you. It's my favorite sentence. SLA aren't just a support thing. They affect many teams, dev teams, ops, product team. So if we treat them like a support only metrics, I believe we are missing the half of the picture here. And I believe we can say that SLA are kind of like the heartbeat of the process. If they are set up right, you've got the flow, you've got the clarity, things get done. But if they are broken, you feel it everywhere.
Yeah, that is so true. But before we dive into the solutions and going deeper into that area, I think that we should zoom it out for a little bit and think about why this is a really important topic nowadays. So, to be honest, I think that one of the reasons is a huge pressure that is put on the support teams these days. During the interviews, I was able to feel that almost, because I heard a lot about how the expectations currently are getting higher and higher. And basically, it is from both sides, because from the client's perspective, the expectations are rising, and from the management as well. So basically, everybody wants nowadays that support teams respond to the tickets faster and faster, right? And at the same time, support teams are facing more and more quite really complicated tickets, and that requires a lot of time to solve them. So when you look at the numbers, you can see that the stakes are pretty high, because one bad experience can cost you over a third of customers, and they are simply gone after one bad experience. So yeah, I truly believe that the pressure is huge, and this is one of the reasons why SLA management is so important right now.
Yeah, and I've seen that too. And moreover, I think that we sometimes forget that an SLA is really just a promise. So if we say we will get back to someone in a certain amount of time, we should mean it, right? But that works only if what we are promising is actually realistic, because it's way better to say, hey, we will get back to you in 6 hours and do that in 98% of the time than to promise, for example, super quick 2 hour response and constantly miss it. And at the end of the day, most customers, in my opinion, care more about consistency than speed. They just want to know they can count on us here.
Yes, that's true. And the second reason why SLA is really important nowadays is the complexity of modern service delivery, because I think that you all know that. And so service delivery nowadays, it's anything but simple. The numbers say it all. Most employees currently are working across different teams. They are reporting to different managers. And today we don't we don't work in an isolated teams. We need to collaborate with each other. We need to talk to each other. We need to exchange some different informations between different teams. And these days, even a single customer request can touch multiple teams, from support team to development team, sometimes even to third-party vendors. And every time the request is switching the team, the risk is added. Yeah, so every handoff adds additional risk, and there is a chance, the higher chance that SLA will breach. So yeah, I think that SLAs can get complicated pretty fast.
Yeah, that is true. So without this, this hot topic is going with some consequences, right, as well, right? So Marta, what happens when we do not have enough control over our SLAs?
So, as I told you before, at first I thought that SLAs are more about metrics that are working to be able to report to create some reporting, right? And they are more about internal metrics, some KPIs, and they are basically for the support teams. But when we are talking that when we see the perspective that the SLA is really a promise to your customer, then we realize that when the SLA is missed, people will see that, will notice that, right? And one of the three biggest cost categories are related nowadays with SLA penalties. So yeah, the stakes are really huge here. And I would like to share a quick story regarding this topic. One team that we were spoken to from the support team. It was a support team, and they were supporting some enterprise clients in the financial sector. They told me that one time they had to mark the ticket that they received as a high priority, but someone made a mistake and marked it as medium. And no one noticed that. So the SLA was longer than it's supposed to be. The client waited, got frustrated eventually, and escalated at the end. After that, of course, he left a public review, a pretty bad one. And what is more, because it was a financial sector, they had penalties for breaching SLAs, and the company had to pay. So yeah, one small configuration issue can cause both reputational damage and, in some cases, in some industries, also financial consequences.
Yeah, and here we can say that most of the time it's something small, right? When it comes to the slipping through the cracks of things. One field not set correctly, one automation not firing, and that's all, to be honest. What's frustrating here is that the team is usually doing their best, but if the setup isn't solid, even a small mistake can look like we are ignoring the customer. And once that trust is broken, it's really hard to rebuild it, especially when it goes public.
Yeah, and the reality is brutal here. SLA compliance is more than KPI. It's more about trust and customer satisfaction. And when it comes to the brutality, let's say, I would like to share with you some examples that bringing market data to life. The first very honest review is regarding the service that took around 6 years. The customer waited 6 years to just hear that this bug that he requested to be solved wouldn't be fixed, right? So it ended up with the one-star review, of course. The other example is more about the poor communication and problems with time zones, with mixing up time zones. And of course, the ticket was left unresolved, and that story also ended up with one-star review. And the last example is from our interviews. I had a meeting with one of the Jira consultants, and he told us that he was working for a company where even 2 minutes breach could lead to serious financial penalties. And, it was thousands of dollars. So really, bad control over the SLA management, don't stay hidden. It can damage your reputation and also have some financial consequences, as we said previously, right?
Yeah, thank you, Marta, for sharing that insights from your research. It's really showing us that this is really hot topic because of the reasons, and they are valid reasons. And right now, like we've shared a bit about SLAs and why this is a hot topic for us and for a lot of other teams and roles we've spoken to. But now we are really curious, what about you guys? What's your reality when it comes to the SLAs? And you should see a quick multiple choice poll pop up. Just pick what fits your team best. No pressure. You can have multiple issues and challenges with it. We would love to know more about your challenges and whether they are similar to ours, of course. So you have like 15 more seconds. And Marta, if I can ask you, please jump into the chat and check the results for us. If I may ask you, it will be great.
Okay, so I think that we have the most important challenge, which is lack of clear SLA definitions. And the other one is more about complex SLA configurations. And the last one, which is closing the top three, is the lack of visibility for customers. So, okay, so keep that in mind as we will talk through the next part, and we will try to reflect on those topics with some practical examples. Okay, so now we are reaching to the point where we will be talking about SLA pain points and practical solutions to that. And we would like to go and check the root causes of those problems, right? So where the problems with SLA really happen. I would like to walk with you through some of the common pain points and what can actually help to streamline the process.
From my side and from my experience, I can add that these problems rarely come just from one place. They can show up in a different ways depending on the role, the team, the process, or even company industry. And I believe what is similar for each of those, that the tricky part is that most of the time you don't notice there is an issue until something breaks in, and by then you are already in the firefighting mode.
Yeah, I agree totally. And when we talk to different teams and different managers connected to the service desk world in general, we were able to distinguish three major areas where the problems were the most common. And here you can see them. You might recognize them too. Those are challenges regarding the standardization, process optimization, and communication and transparency. We kept hearing about them, on and on. They are exactly the areas what we decided to work and to try to improve the situation in those three areas. So let's go to the first one. So I heard during one of the interviews from the technical partner program manager, that ensuring the SLA consistency, especially when you have several different teams that you are working with, is pretty tough because you cannot check one project or one team. You need to dive deeper, see the bigger picture across teams, and standardizing SLAs can help you and everyone engaged in the process to stay aligned and to give your teams and your managers a clear centralized view, which will be easier to manage. So I truly believe that without this holistic view of SLAs, it's easy to miss some issues or get confused sometimes. So to me, it isn't just a nice to have. When you have complicated environments, it's a key to managing SLAs well.
Yeah, and that really resonates with me. What I often see, especially from the support side, is that setting up SLAs in JSM works great within a single project, right? You can define goals, calendars, condition, it's all perfectly good. But there is a catch. You have to do it separately for each of the project. And that means if you get, let's say, 10 service desks team, right? Each one needs their own SLAs configuration, and sure, it's doable, but it quickly turns into a lot of manual work, copying, pasting, checking if things match. Now imagine adding other teams into the mix, right? developers, product managers, operations. These people often work outside of Jira Service Management, excuse me, and in Jira software in business projects. So what happens when you need to add them across your SLA processes, right? It's not that easy. So what solution can be? For example, having a centralized cross-team SLA setup can really help you with this. Not to replace Jira, but to build on top of it when your process get more complex or should be shared across your teams. It's really good to have that centralized view in that specific situations.
Okay, so when we were thinking more about the standardization and those centralized view of different projects, we can move on and now focus on configuration issues and trying to reflect your real business needs into those configurations. So the configurations here should be flexible, should help you to reflect your actual process of making the service to the client. And during one of the interviews, I heard from the support team lead that he at first tried to use one SLA setup for everything. So, this approach, one size fits it all. But after a while, or I think very quickly, he understood that it didn't really match their work actually. And they switched to different SLAs. They started to make it more granular, and they decided to use different types of issues with different priorities, different conditions, and make it a little bit more flexible. You can adapt those configurations to your real business needs, and I think it's really a key. It will help you to stay aligned with how your business really works, really operates. And just be careful not to go to the second direction, that you were at first trying to have one SLAs for everything, and then you will jump into having a lot of different SLAs. Try to stay in the place where you are using SLAs only in the places where it is really important for your business, right? And of course, try to automate your processes where you can, as simple as that. Thanks to that, it will reduce the manual work, and it will lower the risk of human errors, right?
Yeah, and it's super important to figure out the solution on how we can optimize SLA processes. And by that, I mean avoiding manual work wherever possible. So I can tell that the automation in the SLA's metrics is a lifesaver here, right? For example, why should the SLA clock start ticking before anyone is actually assigned to the issue or before it reaches the certain status? It make way more sense to start the timer only when an assignee is assigned and the ticket hits the right status. And similarly, it's smart to pause it when the ticket moves to other team for investigation, for review, and you can get creative with those conditions in the SLA. Trigger this when status change, when assignee change, comments adds, or other criteria, depending on what your team really needs. That way, the SLA truly reflects the real time spent working on the issue, not just waiting around. But you are right, Marta. It's not all, because having goals that are adequately divided is also super important for it.
Yeah, that's well said, Diana. But moving on from the standardization and configuration part, now we're in the area of monitoring. So we have everything set up and configured, but then there are more challenges along the way, because there are difficulties when you have different projects, different SLAs, and you need to keep track of all of those places. You need to switch screens. So without a clear real-time view, I truly believe it's hard to identify which SLA are on a track and which are at risk. So the team frequently miss the deadlines due to that fact that they don't have the right visibility into the task urgency, especially when you have several different projects that you need to handle and decide what to prioritize.
Yeah, and tracking across multiple projects or even multiple teams can get really complicated, or because of that, time consuming as well. And that's why it's really important to show SLAs clearly right where people work the most. Thanks to it, they can sort tasks by SLA or priority and know exactly what needs their attention first. And I feel that this is at today's webinar motto somehow, that SLAs aren't just timers. They help us understand how urgent a task really is. And when you can see the SLAs next to your task, it's easier to decide what needs to be handled right away and what can wait a bit longer, for example, right? That way, teams don't just react to whatever's loudest or newest, but focus on what actually impacts customer and business the most. And of course, natively, Jira Service Management lets agency SLAs in for and queues per project, which works fine for some setups for some processes. But if your structure is more complex than that, it's worth to looking into ways to bring that visibility into one place. And that's when a solution with having a centralized view, a single queue showing all tasks across projects, or multiple queues for multiple teams working together really helps here. It saves you from jumping back and forth between projects, wasting time. It making it way easier to keep track of everything that's urgent and prioritize this in smart way.
Yes, I completely agree with you. But okay, let's move on to the next challenge. It will be more about the process itself because your business is currently evolving. It's not rigid. It's not nowadays it's not stable very often. So we need to identify our bottlenecks in the process. So it's really nice to have every now and then to check how our process is working. Are there any bottlenecks there? Do we miss anything? So during the interviews, one of the IT administrators shared with me a really nice insight that his team is using JQL queries to get the data on what's going on. So they are having those information already in the system, but they need to get it out to be visible. And thanks to that queries, they can find what is missing, where they are getting SLAs getting breached more frequently, for example. Simply identify the bottlenecks, right? It's all about using the data that you are already having in your system to keep the process running smoothly.
Absolutely. Having the right data makes a huge difference. With Jira's JQL, you can create filters to track detailed SLA information, right? For example, tickets that are close to breaching, how long an SLA has been paused, or how long issue stays in certain statuses. Of course, you can also mix and match these metrics to focus on more specific cases, right? Like high priority tickets that have been waiting too long, or those stuck without any updates. And this level of filtering help teams spot bottlenecks, as you've said, in an early stage and prioritize their work effectively. Plus, once you set up these queries in Issue Navigator, you can save them, right, as a filter and reuse them as a dashboard, or just to track them to keep continuous tracking of SLA health without manually typing everything from the scratch. So JQL gives you a powerful data-driven way to manage SLA proactively and keeps things running smoothly thanks to it.
Yes. When it comes to the last area that we said that we will be discussing today, so the communication and transparency, we understood that there is a challenge regarding the cross-team communication, right? So monitoring SLAs can be tricky when they are not visible enough, and especially when they are not visible at all. So for some development teams, for example, that doesn't have any agent's license, often teams only realize that they have missed an SLA during the weekly meetings and when someone points it out. Like here in this example, one of the program managers very often points it out at the meeting. And this kind of lag makes it hard to fix issues and keep everyone aligned. And I truly believe it's that having clear real-time visibility and sometimes automated alerts is really important to help those teams to catch problems early enough and stay on track together.
Right, and honestly, I've been there and done that. And having the SLA's info on the issue view works well, sorry, for agents. But when a process involves other teams, like you said, devs or product folks, visibility becomes a challenge, especially if they don't have agent licenses. And for example, let's say a customer reports a bug, right? So support does the triage, do first response, then hand it over to the dev team. And the devs often have their own SLAs. For example, to do the initial investigation. But if they don't see that clock ticking, it's easy for things to slip. And sometimes, as I've said, SLA for agent is perfectly enough, but more and more often, teams want to set separate SLAs for dev work, for QA, or even product review. And if those teams can't track the SLA where they work, on a board or dashboard, it creates a blind spot. And the perfect solution for it is to have that kind of way to show where SLA for the dev will breach, sorry, and clear understanding of what's going on, how much time we spend on the issue, and how much time we left to do what we need to do here. And Jira isn't broken here. It's just that as the process expand beyond support, you may need additional solution or tools to keep everyone aligned.
Right. And moving on to the last challenge that we discovered is about transparency with the customers. We truly believe at Divinity that transparency is a key, not just within teams, but also with your customers. So when customers can see how much time technicians they have to resolve their issues, it will build in the trust and it will set the clear expectations. And I guarantee that it will also lower the risk of escalations. So if you have the possibility to share your SLA with your customers, for example, I don't know, you are having internal service desks and your customers are your colleagues from the same organization, maybe it is a case where you can share those SLAs between each other. We know that unfortunately the Jira Service Management doesn't offer this kind of visibility for customers, but we truly believe that it can lead to frustration and uncertainty. And sharing SLA status will help to improve this communication and reduce this back and forth communication and help to support teams to focus on the real problems and resolving those real challenges that the customer have.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with you, Marta. From my experience, that kind of transparency can really change the tone of the whole support relations. But the tricky part, as you said, is Jira doesn't natively let customers see progress on the portal. So even if your teams are doing great work internally, the customer might still feel like they are being left in the dark. They don't know if anyone's working on it, how much time is left. That's why it's so valuable to have a tool or solution that support that kind of configuration, that one that lets you share SLA statuses in the portal in the clear, user friendly, and what's equally important, controlled way, because we know that some of SLAs shouldn't be presented for customers because they are internally handled and help internal teams for it. And when it comes to customers, it's not just about being nice, it's about reducing unnecessary follow ups and building confidence between our relation with customers. Because as we've said many times, when as customers sees, okay, there's 2 hours left, they've got this, they are more likely to stay calm and trust this process.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. So we shared with you, I think, a lot of informations today. So let's wrap it up very quickly and answer the question, what really makes a difference when we are talking about SLA management? Of course, it will be based on our experiences and on interviews that we conducted during the product discovery process. And first of all, what is really important, what truly makes a difference, is that the best SLAs are coming from the real business needs. So not from the industry benchmarks. Of course, they are important. You should use them to guide you. But you should think more about what actually matters in your service process and think what is the most important to have the SLA. So try not to come with the first approach that one solution fits it all, one SLA fits it all, but be careful with this other approach where you have, I don't know, 30, 40 different SLAs for every little part of the process. Try to be somewhere in the middle. And the other tip that we are having is try to remember that SLA is a promise to your customer. And when you define this SLA, you are telling your customers, hey, you can count on us. We will do that in the time that we are telling you. So this consistency I think, really beats the ambition. And it's better to promise, I don't know, for our SLA that you are sure you will meet in 98% of the time, then set half an hour and get it broken every other day, right? Customer will value more your reliability than the speed.
Yeah, and I would like to tell you a little bit about visibility and transparency. So, a good practice is to making SLAs visible to everyone involved, including the customers, because visibility and clarity are key in any process. And SLAs should be familiar and understood, not just be configured in the background. And transparency with customers is also essential for building trust throughout the process. And moreover, it helps to link all touch points from the customer to the development team and back again. Moreover, you should review and adjust SLAs once in a time, because mature team regularly ask themselves, do our SLAs still make sense? Why it cannot make sense, for example, for that time? Because business changes, because customer expectations constantly evolving, and it's good practice to revisit your SLAs from time to time. Maybe it seems the best right now, but in the future it should be adjusted to the business changes and expectations from your customers. But remember, if an SLA is breached, it's not the end of the world. It's a sign that something didn't work. Instead of asking who messed up, searching for a responsible person for it, it's more useful to ask, what can we learn from this, and how we can improve our SLAs to make it better to achieve. And finally, leadership matters. A good leader doesn't use SLA breaches to point fingers. They use it as a conversation starter. What's slowing us down? How we can support the team better. So if you are using SLAs, metrics, use them as a guide, not as a weapon. And all right, I believe we are coming to the end of our session now, but please stay with us. I warned you, we are talkers, and it's time for questions. Just a quick reminder: the entire webinar is being recorded, so you will receive this recorded session. So if you want to come back later and rewatch any part, you will be able to. And this is the last moment to drop questions in the chat box. We will try to get through some of them. And if we don't get to your questions right now, no worries at all. We will include answers in the follow-up summary email. So, Marta, would you be so kind and check the chat for any questions we might have there?
Yeah, sure. 1 second. Okay, 1 second, 1 second. Okay, I can see one question. Can we set the SLA to pause when a ticket goes to another team or into any status from workflow, like waiting status? Diana, would you like to answer that?
Yeah. So, of course, you can pause, start, finish even your SLAs clocks in a moment when some certain conditions are met. For example, you pass this to other team or you use some specific status. So it's doable. Of course, you can use automation for SLAs.
Okay, we have another one. 1 second. Oh, it's a question. So it's better to underpromise than overdeliver, right? Yeah, I can quickly answer that. I think that's right. That's correct summary of one of our good practices that we recommend. Okay. Do we have any more questions? Okay, I don't see any.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine, guys. If you have any questions after our session, just scan the QR code to Marta LinkedIn, to mine LinkedIn. Reach out to us anytime if you have more questions. If you would like to discuss a little bit more about SLAs, for example, we will be happy to discuss with you after the session as well. Moreover, if you are looking for any specific tools solution that's can help you with achieving the good practices we've shared today with you, I encourage you to scan the QR code to SLA time management app and get familiarized with it because it addressed 100% good practices we've shared with you today. So scan the QR code, use it, and if you have any questions, reach out to us anytime you would like to. So I believe this is the time to wrap up all of our webinar. It was good to have you here, guys. It was good to talk with you, Marta. It was a pleasure. So thank you. I hope to see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure too. Thank you for that event.
Perfect. Bye, guys. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.